Jẹ́ ká lẹ́san wa o, bàbá jẹ́ ká lẹ́yẹ̀ wa. Agogo tó ń ka wákàtí ọjọ́. Ká wákàtí mi sí re o. All right. Good morning, everybody. It's 9:45 now, and I'm here. So, welcome to church. Can you all hear me? Okay, I can see you hearing me. That's Fatima Ahmed. It's good to see you. Salam alaikum. Peace of God be upon you and all that are yours, the entire household. All right. Welcome this morning, everybody. So here is what I found during the course of the week. I saw something pleasantly surprising, if the truth be told. Quite a number of you actually watched last week's video. It was double the number that has ever watched any of our services, at least on my own platform. Everybody goes elsewhere to watch the things that I put out there, but that's fine. The important thing is you are hearing, but you must move beyond hearing, and we must get to the point of doing. But this morning, you will pardon me. I will do the same thing I've been doing for a bit because there is the urgency of the movement. So you will pardon me. I'm going to spend a little time speaking to my Yoruba brethren who are unable to understand this Dogon Trenchi that me and you are constantly bantering around. For those who are familiar with my ministry, quote and unquote, you will understand that I have a compulsive need to speak to those who are willing to hear. And it's been very unfair that some people have not heard because I am not speaking in a language that they understand. And since I'm blessed to have the Yoruba language, I guarantee you that I will continue to speak in that language. It might very well be that because of the constraints we've noticed with what's it called now? This platform, YouTube, we may need to be pre-recording the Yoruba section so that we might minimize the technical challenges we are having. My dear friend Baba Jesha did reach out to me to teach me how to overcome that challenge. But anyway, neither here nor there. So this morning, you pardon me, I'll do a little bit of Yoruba. It's not going to be too long. We use that time for those of you who have not understood Yoruba before. You start listening and understanding now. And Josie Pele, I don't know where you are. You say it's 2:45 a.m. where you are. Pele, brother, it is well with you. So, everybody, good morning. I will go into my Yoruba section now. Ẹ káàárọ̀ ẹ̀yin èèyàn wa nílé lóko bóyá bẹ́ẹ̀ dàbí Josie tó yẹ pé ìdájí ló wà níbi tó wà lọ́gànjọ́ òru tó dẹ̀ ń gbọ́ wa. Ọlọ́run á fèrè síṣẹ́ gbogbo yín ẹ̀ní ṣíṣe. Ẹ kéré oko délé. It is well. Ṣé rí ní àárọ̀ yìí mi ò ní gbà wá ní àkókò púpọ̀, ṣùgbọ́n nǹkan tí mo fẹ́ fi bá wa sọ̀rọ̀ ó wà nínú tí mo máa sọ ńgbà bá bẹ̀rẹ̀ sí ní sọ èdè Gẹ̀ẹ́sì ńgbà bá parí tààrin tiwa ń bínú. Ṣùgbọ́n ìwọ tó bá bá wa gbọ́ èdè Gẹ̀ẹ́sì ní sùúrù farabalẹ̀ gbọ́ torí ọ̀rọ̀ yẹn jìn díẹ̀. Ṣùgbọ́n bí a ṣe báwọn bàbá wa ṣe sọ wọ́n ní àti òkèèrè ni olójú jíjìn ló ti ń mú ẹkún sun. Òwe àwọn bàbá wa ni àtòkèèrè ni olójú jíjìn ló ti ń mẹ́kún sun. Kí ni wọ́n ń wí gangan? Ní tí wọ́n ń sọ ni pé ìfẹ́ àwọn tó mọ̀wé kan wọ́n tó fi kún. Wọ́n ní ó ń bọ̀ àwọ̀lá dẹ́ẹ̀dẹ́. Ní tí gbogbo àwọn òwe yìí ń sọ ni pé kí wàhálà tó dé ẹ múra lẹ́dẹ̀ kó má bàa bá yín lábo. Wọ́n lógun àwítẹ́lẹ̀ kì í parọ́. Ṣùgbọ́n àwọn bàbá wa sọ ẹ̀já ẹ̀ wọ́n láàárọ̀ èyí tó bá gbọ́. Irú ẹ̀yin tá à ń bára wa ṣèdè tẹ́ ẹ̀ gbẹ́dẹ̀ Gẹ̀ẹ́sì bóyá ẹ̀ tí ẹ̀ bá àwọn ọ̀rọ̀ tèmi pàdé rí, ó lè máa bá yín lò èjì tó máa ń sọ fún yín pé wàhálà ń bọ̀, wàhálà ti dé ni kì í pé ó ń bọ̀ mọ́. Ó ti dé, ó wà pẹ̀lú wa. Wọ́n lọ́rùn wá bọ́ ọ lálejò, ó ní òsáyè. Igi imú rẹ tó ní òtó òun jókòó sí ni. Bẹ́ẹ̀ bá tí ẹ gbọ́ ṣẹ́ ẹ̀ tí ì mọ̀ ni. Ó ti di báwọn èèyàn wa wọn ò lè lọ sóko wọn mọ́. Kì í ṣe nínú àwọn odi wa o. Àwọn èèyàn tèmi mo mọ̀ èèyàn tó yẹ pé lọ́sẹ̀ tó kọjá inú ọ̀sẹ̀ tá ẹ̀ṣẹ̀ lò tán yìí náà jí gbé nínú Ìjẹ̀bú Òde. Chinese kan náà wọ́n jí gbé nínú Ìjẹ̀bú Òde. Wọ́n sì jí wọn gbé, owó tó ń gbà wọ́n tún fi ń rà bọ́n, wọ́n fi ń rọta sí ni láti máa gbé èèyàn sí. Àwọn tó wá ń jí ni gbé tó yẹ pé inú igbó náà ti ń gbé wọn tẹ́lẹ̀, Èkìtì, Kwara, ṣẹtìrí tó ń ṣẹlẹ̀ ní gbogbo ọ̀nà bẹ̀. Nígbà tó wá ti di pé ó ti ń wọnú ìlú, wọ́n ń gbé èèyàn tó lọ sóko ẹ̀ nínú ìlú, kì í ṣe oko tó wà níbi tó jìnnà, oko etílé. O bá ṣáà ní poultry, o ṣáà ní dúró nítòsí, ó ṣáà bọ́ sí ibi odi ìlú, nínú ìlú, nínú Ìjẹ̀bú, nínú Ẹ̀pẹ́, nínú Èkó. Èyí tèmi mọ̀, Ìjẹ̀bú ló ti ṣẹlẹ̀. Ìgbà wo gangan la fẹ́ bẹ̀rẹ̀ sí ní pe àwọn èèyàn wa pé kí wọ́n pera wọn ṣàkíyèsí pógun ti ká wa mọ́lé? Ìgbà wo lẹ fẹ́ bẹ̀rẹ̀ sí ní di àwọn olórí yín mú, àwọn ọba, àwọn ìjòyè, local government chairman yín, àwọn councillor yín? Ìgbà wo lẹ fẹ́ bẹ̀rẹ̀ sí ní jẹ́ kó yé yín wípé àwọn bí wọ́n ń jiyàn gbé, wọn ò ní súnmọ́dọ̀ tiwọn, torí báwọn bá ń lọ mòpó lọ́tún mòpó lósì, àwọn náà sì lè àwọn kinní tá à ń wí yìí. Torí bí ò bá rí bẹ́ẹ̀ ni ó ti wá di wípé Sòbìà, kì í ṣe pé wọ́n pe Olúlàbẹ, wọ́n sọ fún Olúlàbẹ gan sùn níbi tí Sòbìà ti ń dégbò ni, àfi kó tó bẹ̀rẹ̀ sí ní máa bá wọn yá lọ́bẹ kó lè dégbò kó tó lè tàn dáadáa. Ibo la wá ń lọ gangan? Kí ni ìtumọ̀ gbogbo eléyìí? Ṣé rí ọ̀rọ̀ tó wà ńlẹ̀ yìí, wọ́n léèyàn méjì kì í jẹ̀bi irọ́ o. Ẹni méjì kì í jẹ̀bi irọ́. Bí wọ́n bá lẹ́yìn ló kàn, nítorí yẹ kẹ́ kọ́kọ́ bira yín ni pé kí ló wá kàn wá báyìí? Kí ni nǹkan tó kàn wá gangan nínú ogun tó wà ńlẹ̀? Ṣé àwọn ọmọ iléèwé wa, àwọn ọmọ wa tí ń lọ iléèwé ní iléèwé wọn sàn sí tàná ni? Àbí ilé ìwòsàn ló sàn sí tìjẹta? Àbáwọn òpópónà wa ni wọ́n tún ṣe? Àbẹ́yìn fúnra yín lẹ róúnjẹ rà tí ìṣọ̀wọ́n gógó? Kí ni tó kàn yín gangan nínú tó wà ńlẹ̀ tó wá fi di pé wọ́n parọ́ fún yín, ẹ̀yin náà bá wọn tún sọ? Kí ni tó wà ńlẹ̀? Ó dáa náà, ẹ wo kí ni wọ́n ṣe àmbásádọ̀ tí wọ́n gbé jáde. Ṣírú àwọn èèyàn tẹ fẹ́ kí wọ́n máa nàka sí, wọ́n ní fọ̀rẹ́ rẹ̀ hàn mí kí n sọrú ẹni tó jẹ́. Ṣírú àwọn tí wọ́n nàka sí láti sọrú èèyàn tá a jẹ́ lórílẹ̀-èdè yìí náà nù? Sáwọn náà nù? Àbáwọn náà kọ́ ẹ̀? Èèyàn méjì jẹ̀bi irọ́ o. Bó bá ti di pé èèyàn méjì ń jẹ̀bi irọ́, ó yẹ ká bẹ̀rẹ̀ sí ní yẹra wa lọ́pọlọ wò. Wọ́n wá sọ ọkùnrin lèmi ò fi kó ńlẹ̀. Wọ́n ní àìfẹ̀sọ̀ kébòsí òní ò ṣeé jó. Bí èèyàn bá fẹ̀sọ̀ kébòsí, wọn a máa jó sí o. Tó wà ńlẹ̀ yìí, mo ti fẹ̀sọ̀ ké, mo ti pariwo, ohun ti há. Àwọn kan ti sọ ṣáájú tèmi, àwọn kan sọ fún àwọn bàbá wa, wọn ò gbọ́. Àwa náà ń sọ fún yín lónìí, Ọlọ́run jẹ́ ẹ gbà o. Ọjọ́ ń lọ o. Ọjọ́ ń lọ o. Wọ́n ń jí wọn gbé lọ́tùn, wọ́n ń jí wọn gbé lósì. Kí la rà? Kí ló dé táwa fúnra wa ò tiẹ̀ wá lè bìjọba wa léèrè pé kí wọ́n rà ń gbà àwọn ará bíi tí wọn ò fi lè ṣe nǹkan kan sí? Tó, èmi ò rí jù bẹ́ẹ̀ lọ o. Nǹkan kan yọ kóró kan tí mo lè máa pè é ṣàkíyèsí ẹ̀ náà ni pé bọ́tùn bá ṣe tí ò dáa, tẹ́ ẹ pé kò dáa, bósì náà bá ṣerú ẹ̀ torí pé ó jọ́ ọmọ tiwa, a gbọ́dọ̀ kó dáa o. Bàbá rí mí lẹ́sẹ̀ ara wa tá ń pè lẹ́rẹ̀, ara wa là ń tàn o. Ibi tẹ́tàn sì bá wa dé, ibẹ̀ la wà yìí o. Ó ti dàrú tán o. Mi ń sọ tèmi o. Mi ń sọ tèmi o. Àwọn tí ń dúró lórí mandate, wọ́n ń dúró o. Ẹsẹ̀ ń ro ẹni torí ẹ̀ bá pé o. Iná sì ti ń jó lọ́tùn, ó ń jó lósì. Katsina, ìlú Buhari tó ti ṣolóògbé lénìí, àwọn ló kàn lánàá o. Ẹ̀nà ẹ̀ máa wo ohun tó kàn wọ́n lónìí o. Ibẹ̀ lẹ ti rí wọn tí bandit ti ń gba owó ìṣàkọ́lẹ̀ lọ́wọ́ gbogbo wọn, tí bandit yóò mọ̀ sọ fọ́lọ́pàá pé kò gbọ́dọ̀ wọṣọ. Èmi wí tèmi o. Ẹ̀yin ló kàn. Ibi ò ní kàn yín o. Ibi ò ní kẹ́mi náà. Ibi ò ní kàn kankan nù wa. Ìgbòwúrọ̀ lèmi wà o. Bẹ́ẹ̀ ni mo sọ. Ìgbòwúrọ̀ mo wà. Ọjọ́ ó sì jìn. Good morning, everybody. I told you my Yoruba section wasn't going to stay too long today. I have a lot of things to deal with in preaching my sermon this morning. And because there is quite a lot to unpack, and there are some things that are not completely relevant to my topic, and I don't want to lump it together. So I'll spend the few minutes that I have before the time to make some clarifications. You know, I have had to ask myself, and some persons who have been commenting online have alluded to it when he was talking about the paucity of numbers on the platform and the lack of reactions and all of that. You know, I asked myself long ago at the peak of my frustrations and disillusionment with Nigeria. I asked myself, why do I do what I do? Because it doesn't even seem like the victims really care to have anything done about their circumstances, that they are not exactly victims in most cases. Nigerians have become accomplices in their own ruination and enslavement, virtual enslavement. It seemed quite pointless to continue to speak. And I was actually despaired. I was in the midst of this funk where I just had to question my own sanity and wondered, why do I do what I do, given the price that I have had to pay over the years? And then it struck me. And at that point, I wrote an essay which I shared, and you'll find it on my platforms. I said, I do not write for you. It was at that point that I truly came into my own in understanding the fact that what I do is actually not done any longer for you. I'm sorry to say that's the truth. Those of you who are living in my time, my contemporaries, people with whom I'm sharing time and space, I actually truly no longer do anything for you. It's gotten to that point where I've settled in my spirit that what I do is actually I'm bearing testimony against you. I am letting, perhaps maybe it's the generation coming after us, or maybe it's the one coming after them. I'm letting them understand how we got to wherever we might be by the time my own time is spent, because we're all creatures in time. I had grown in my teenage years believing that when we chase the military off, we would have the utopia that I believe that is possible given the potentials of Nigeria. And then when we did chase the military off, some of us took our eyes off the ball in the assumption that El Dorado had been won. After all, we had one such as the one that is sat in the presidency today, forming Abraham Lincoln and postulating and vibrating all kind of sentinels all over the place. So it was like, okay, we could relax and go live our lives. So it was the realization that what we thought would happen had failed to happen. In the depth of all of that, I realized that it is critical that a record be kept so that another generation might perhaps navigate its way to sanity. So I need you to understand that my exertions should be viewed from that point. It is not designed to titillate you. So I'm not going to advertise my existence and ask you, come and listen. You've listened for years, is bettered nothing positive in a critical mass. I've seen persons who once deified more or less implode and reveal themselves for exactly what they are. Your ambassadorial list, congratulations. The very best of you are going to go represent all of you. So you see, I'm just saying so that we understand, and I have said that so that you'll be able to place this morning's sermon in context. And I'll go into my sermon now, saying that it's now 10 o'clock. So good morning, everybody. Welcome, I dare say, to church. What we do here, we are neither denominational nor religious. We simply tell ourselves the truth. Without the truth, this platform collapses. So be prepared to listen to some truth this morning. I titled today's sermon, Save Our Souls. Save our souls. What do I mean when I said save our souls? What does it mean? Why save our soul? You know, since the advent of Google, I've always used Google as my sparring partner, at least a place to search for information. And then Google introduced the AI mode. And that just resonated with me immediately because I grew up arguing precepts and concepts with persons who were by far more intelligent than me. So when a thought occurs to me, I would bounce it off persons who were wiser than me, older than me. I grew up with my grandparents. So we would have these robust engagements. We would argue back and forth, have this robust engagement where we are doing everything possible to make sure that I am either purged of my ignorance or somewhere along the line, I somewhere get purged of my ignorance or become convinced of my position. So, over the course of time, as I grew used to the AI mode of Google, I began to get more and more information of it by arguing with it. So I would ask a question of the AI mode, something that has occurred to me, and then we would argue back and forth. I don't have to worry about human ego, and I can rely on it as having superior intelligence, even though I might have better information. So it's become a way for me to clarify my thoughts over time. Now, an SOS, I asked Google, what is when do you send an SOS? Because for me, save our soul, the situation would appear completely intractable and very, very, very dicey. So I asked AI, when do you send save our soul signals? Yeah, an SOS should only be sent in situations of extreme life-threatening danger when immediate rescue is imperative for survival. Did you hear that? AI told me. Said an SOS should be sent in situations of extreme life-threatening danger where immediate rescue is imperative for survival. So I looked at my objective reality as a Nigerian because that was how I felt when I picked my topic. Save our soul. Everything appears completely hopeless. I am burdened with a brain. My brain tells me that 2 plus 2 is equal to 4. It tells me that there are seed time and then harvest time. If you plant, you will reap. There is no way you will plant without reaping. And I see all the things that the Nigerian state has planted, that the Nigerian victims have tolerated, nurtured, planted. I see the lies and I spoke to it. I spoke of the harvest of lies. I spoke of the nation of liars. I saw all the things to which I had spoken and I see the continuing deterioration. And I realized that our situation had come to the point where we are analogous to a sinking ship. And we actually do qualify to send out the distress signal, save our soul. But why do I believe us qualified? Our lives are in imminent danger. That is the reality. Our towns and villages, even cities, are no longer safe and the dangers have become existential. We've lost We've lost everything completely to do with the capacity to communicate our pain to persons who can hear, and everything that is essential for survival is gone. A lot of persons are in IDP camps. They lack water. Even persons who are not in IDP camps, they lack water, potable water. They lack food supplies. Peace is elusive wherever you turn. This vessel is sinking. And all we are doing is we are rearranging deck chairs. I'm seeing persons who have no business anywhere where sensible human beings are gathered being appointed to go and represent Nigeria as ambassadors. Have you seen our president at international fora? He will be stood to one corner, incapable of mixing with the persons he was meant to be interfacing with. These persons are constantly in the front of the people, debasing themselves, and these are the persons that we are meant to be represented by. Femi Fani-Kayode, Reno Omokri, the drunk that was in Enugu. And we are lying to ourselves that we are still possessed of a country. You shout and send out distress signals when the state is failing, is structurally weak, not when it has imploded. And let me be very clear about this. You only speak to those who can hear you. And it is unfortunate that the Nigerian state is completely incapable of hearing. So my SOS is not to the Nigerian state. My SOS is to everyone and anyone who is still capable of hearing, whether that be foreign governments, whether that be Nigerians in the diaspora, whether those be Nigerians who are also victims right here in Nigeria with me. It is time we all came to the understanding of the fact that this is not about rearranging deck chairs on a sinking ship. The state is sinking. Look, it's lost territory. It cannot control its own territory. And this is in stages. Let me show you. In Katsina, Buhari's home state, entire local government areas are in the hands of what we euphemistically refer to as bandits. We have spoken volumes about the true definition of the terrorists that the Nigerian state mollycoddle and call bandits. They control local governments. They're collecting taxes. They are collecting taxes. Our government is incapable of projecting power into those places. It has no capacity to do that. What I am explaining to you is that whilst you might be ensconced in a situation similar to mine, where I am capable of speaking Dogon Turenchi in air-conditioned spaces, there are Nigerians burying their loved ones today because the Nigerian state has failed in its most basic duty of protecting them. You can call it any name you care to call it. The persons being killed in Katsina, you can't call that genocide. Those are fellow Fulanis and Muslims too. But right now, today, as we are speaking, somebody else, another branch of the madness that has been licensed and tolerated by the Nigerian state, is murdering somebody because they are Christians and because they are non-Muslims, because they own their land that these other persons are coveting. They are killing those persons and taking over their land, and the Nigerian state is stood by, complicit. Complicit. That is what I call it, complicit. Entire communities, villages, despoiled and resettled, and the Nigerian state stands by. That is the one that is genocide. It exists side by side with the terrorism of the ones that you call bandits. It exists side by side with the terrorism of the one that is the mineral bandits, those ones who will chase people off their land because some persons who have legal mining licenses require the services of bandits to access mineral rights that have been given in spite of the existing historical rights of the owners of the land. This is the reality. So if I'm talking about save our soul, it is because the persons who should be saving the Nigerian have become complicit in the ruination of the Nigerian. Our government is complicit in the evil that has overtaken this land. So I am saying save our soul, and this is to anyone who still cares about humanity. Don't wait until you are seeing scenes from our cities of slaughter, because it is coming. That is the reality. All that is standing between us and wholesale slaughter is the illusion of a state that has already failed or is rapidly failing. How can you say it's not a failed state where the state is no longer able to project power and it does not have a monopoly of force? This is the same country where in the South, Tanteta is required to guard our waterways, a country that has a navy. What do you call that? What do you call that? You'll talk to me about private military contractors. This is the same country where Sari Dokubo openly tells all of us that he operates as a non-state actor under the license of the state to carry out missions that is not even accountable to law. The rules of engagement is unknown to anybody. The terms of engagement completely unknown to anybody. Opaque in the extreme. And that is why in the South, you have unknown gunmen, unknown men, you have this one, you have that one, madness everywhere. And he will tell you how many states he has operated in. Why won't he boast about it in a country overtaken by impunity? My friend, too, Philip, on Facebook was quipping about how maybe MC Oluomo should have made the ambassadorial list. How could he make the list when they need him for the 2027 election and all the other strong arm things that has to be done in the country? That is the extent of the country. It has lost its monopoly of force. Everywhere you turn in Nigeria, in the southwest is Agberu. In the southeast is largely, partly Agberu, largely separatist agitation, non-state actors, sometimes licensed by the state. And that is before you begin to factor in the armed Fulani terrorists. The same thing in the south-south. The south-south, you have the armed Fulani terrorists. Yesterday in Enugu, people were kidnapped. In Enugu, persons known to me were kidnapped. As I've been speaking with you online, I have had calls made to me from the phone number of a friend who's been kidnapped. That is the extent of the putrefaction of this state. You might have noticed my distraction a few minutes ago when I was starting this. It was because I was receiving calls from the number of a friend who had been kidnapped by Fulani terrorists in Ogun State. So let's be clear about something. This is not something that is happening to them. It's beginning to happen to us. It's coming home. It is coming home. You have to align this again with the erosion of legitimate authority. Look, ambassadorial list came out. And what did you see? Yahoo, Mahmoud. the one who declared election in the middle of the night and told all of you, go to court. They've named him an ambassador just a little over 2 years after he supervised a fraudulent election. Look, justice must not only be done, it must be seen to have been done. This is a deliberate undermining of the electoral process. It should not be. It should not and could not be that we normalize evil such as this one, where persons who have occupied position of trust that they deliberately, wantonly breached to the knowledge and sight of everybody, and then they are rewarded politically, and it is okay. And you say that is not a failing state. How do you build institutions that endure when such nepotism, such brazen acts of corruption are rewarded by the persons who benefited from this evil? And you are not talking about the faith. Okay, so how do you have faith in that electoral process? So I believe Oshipiton, or whatever the name of the new INEC chairman is, just like it used to be that when you become the NBA chairman, you automatically made it to become the Attorney General. So now, once you become INEC chairman, there is an ambassadorial position waiting afterwards. Is this what we are saying to ourselves? And we think it's not time to shout to those who are still capable of hearing that there is nothing right about this. There is nothing right about this. It does not make sense. It doesn't make sense. How do you talk about a country when it doesn't even take itself serious enough to have ambassadors in foreign countries 2 years after a man had smuggled himself to power? You would imagine that a man with the master plan who grabbed it, snatched it, should have governance ready to run by day one, 2 years after. And this is the best that this system has done. Look all around us. We have a youth bulge. We don't even know how many we are. We lie to ourselves and run with all kinds of estimates, from 180 million to 200 million to 230 million to 220 million. Nobody really knows how many we are. But this is deliberately so that all the illegal immigrants who have overtaken our country, you already have them padded in. You don't know how many you are, but one thing that is clear is that there is a huge youth bulge. The unfortunate thing is that the bulk of this is untrained. Where it is trained, it is miseducated. Where it is not, there is a whole heap of issues staring this in the face. This country is failing, is on its way to failure. You have huge population displacement all over the place. I spoke about the one in Plateau State that is properly documented. 64 villages, 64 villages despoiled and resettled. And there are still governments in this country. A local government chairman is collecting money in relation to those places that have been despoiled and resettled. How? How? You have groups of internally displaced persons camps. Nobody is looking at them, but you are busy resettling, rehabilitating terrorists, and the victims are left ignored. How do you expect to have peace so that a country might endure or even survive? You have unresolved group grievances. The Igbo have genuine grievances against Nigeria. So do the Ijos. So do the Yoruba. So do everybody in Nigeria. Almost everyone has one grievance or the other, legitimate ones, against the Nigerian state. And we dare not ask questions. If we speak, we are intimidated, in some cases, killed, just for speaking. Nothing more, just for speaking. Killed, imprisoned, victimized, just for speaking, not for anything more. Somebody was said to have incited terror. Okay. Life imprisonment. Somebody was a field commander, 20 years in jail. Make it make sense. A man kills a terrorist who was trying to kill him on his own farm. You convict him for murder. Make it make sense. How is that? So, you see, we are getting to a point where we must understand that multiple red lines have been crossed by the Nigerian state. We have a situation today where Nigerians no longer emigrate. It was Shewa Nicola Kokuti who first coined the word, and it's quite succinct. They are escaping now. Let me use myself to illustrate this point. I have never desired to see my children live outside Nigeria. Everything I do, initially, it was about making sure that this country is preserved for our children so that they do not become indentured slaves in other men's land. So, whilst when it was convenient to have packed my bags and baggages and joined the diaspora, it never crossed my mind. I could never see myself living in the diaspora. And I spent eons convincing my children that they want nothing to do with a life in exile. But as the university system collapsed, like most other persons in my generation, we spent money, great sums, educating our children abroad. Sometimes some of us sold our substances, properties acquired over time, savings. We sent them abroad to go to school. And then there's a phenomenon that my generation is now having to deal with. Those young men and women that we spent our substances and our youth training abroad, they don't want to come to Nigeria. They are voting with their feet. They can see the ruination of Nigeria, and they have decided that they will help us in shouting, "Save your souls" from the comfort of exile. Everything we rejected and repudiated is being thrown right back in our faces because we failed to build this country. My own son will tell me he doesn't want to come back to Nigeria. This is a boy I raised understanding that this is home. But can I complain? Have we built a country they can be proud of? You want them to come home for dirty December? They will come. They will come home for dirty December, always waiting for the first opportunity to japa. Some of them wouldn't even come to Lekki or VI. They would rather stay in Ikeja so that they are close to the airport in case everything goes belly up. That is the country we have built, and you don't reckon we should be shouting, "Save our souls." Let me be very clear so that you get it and get it quickly. When you have this much human flight and brain drain, it is contextual evidence of the failure of the state. They've recognized, see, this one that me I'm telling you with Dogon Trenchi that the ship is sinking. Those kids, they understood it early. They can see it that this country is not. I wrote a piece some years ago after a visit to the UK. It struck me in the face. I said Nigeria is not a jungle. I wrote the first one, I wrote the second one. Nigeria is not a jungle one, Nigeria is not a jungle two. That was when I realized that if it was a jungle, it would have some order. They can see the disorder, the chaos with which we live, the organized chaos, the madness that we have acculturated. These kids can see it because they didn't grow up with the madness. They couldn't have any excuses for it. We ensconce them. Now they come around, they call it holiday. It's almost like going on holiday in a war zone, like a safari. That is what Nigeria has become to the diaspora. They come around, barely tolerate us for 2, 3 weeks, and then the japa. Do you know the meaning of japa? That is when you are running with your hand, eating your handpit. That means you are flapping your handpit as you're running. You're running with alarm. That is how they are living Nigeria, running with alarm because they see no hope. And this is why our case has gone beyond the let's warn ourselves. We should be shouting, "Save our souls." But of course, you probably not hear me. You're too busy dancing your azonto. Burna Boy is this, Davido is that. This one Yash is like that. That one do Yash. That one do BF. Don't worry, a generation will come. It might very well be that this is all they would have to navigate their way back to sanity, because we've come to a point where multiple red lines have been crossed. And when these lines have been crossed, it's almost impossible to save this country without a systemic reset. Without a systemic reset, there is very little that can be done. We have a country where everything about the economic indicators suggests that the state itself is the one that has weaponized poverty against the people. It's always been the case, but it has accelerated in the last 10 plus years, in the years of the APC. The state has made impoverishment a policy. 46% of Nigerians live below the poverty line. And this was accelerated in the last 10 years. A person against whom you have weaponized ignorance is already doomed to poverty. That is the reality of the Nigerian and has been his reality for a long time. It didn't start with the APC years. It started in the years of the military, particularly in the Babangida years. But it has accelerated dramatically and dangerously in the last 10 years. You have a situation where the state has rolled out policies deliberately designed to sustain the poverty of the people. I'll show you. These are very demonstrable things. When you begin to hear of, oh, subsidy is gone, what is the tangible benefit of that policy to the Nigerian? There must be benefits intended when policies are mooted or initiated or executed. Kayode Farotimi is on record as making light of the fraudulence of the Nigerian politicians when they opposed Goodluck Jonathan's attempt at removing fuel subsidy in 20, I think that was 2010, 2011. No, 2011. He was very, very eloquent in making fun, and they were laughing all over it and about it. But the question is this: at what cost to the Nigerian people? Now you've removed this subsidy. What has been the benefit to the Nigerian people? Food inflation went through the roof. Nothing has happened in terms of infrastructure development. All that has happened is that governors have more money to steal as to the presidency. So, what has been the benefit? You have gone ahead to weaponize everybody, and to weaponize poverty against everybody. There is the growth today of a hidden and illicit economy. I'll show you. Because of the terrorism in the mineral sector, you have persons who have made billions from gold and diamond and other mineral resources that have been illegally extracted and exported. These persons have money. They have armed bandits to ensure their continuing access to these riches. The state is being compromised in most times, in most cases, by persons who are within the government itself. To whom do we report the evil when the evil is the one in government? How do you report the evil to the evil? Matawale is your Minister of Defense. The amount of allegations against that man alone, pointing at him as a terrorist sponsor, is scary. It is scary. You see complicity everywhere you turn. It is scary. And then you ask yourself, to who do you expect? To who do you turn in expectation of salvation, when the persons who should cure the ailment are the ones who are making it to fester? How? What are you supposed to do? Everywhere you turn, there's economic decline. Everywhere. Everywhere. Even government itself sometimes cannot pay salaries. And you talk about a government when it is already collapsing. Look, when the people look to his government and all they see is just widespread perception of corruption and power privatized for the benefit of a few. Nigeria today, I've spoken to it. I spoke of the feudal republic of Nigeria. That is what we have today. Power being exercised for the benefit of a chosen few. I can't even use the word elite for them because there is nothing elitist about these people. All they do is consume. They are not unlike that insect that stays inside grain, eats and defecates until it dies. That's all the Nigerian politician does. No purpose, no mission, nothing. And those are the ones to whom we are meant to take our appeal. Look all around you. The state is collapsing everywhere you turn. You have states within the state. Yes. I told you last week of the terrorists, the one, Jankari, the one that killed Aminu Dai and was wearing his uniform. An ACP, Assistant Commissioner of Police, was murdered by a terrorist, and the terrorist was wearing his uniform to attend what they called a peace party, where terrorists had told government, we don't want to see any policeman. It wouldn't surprise me if General Uba's uniform turns up on the back of a terrorist, because this is what we have tolerated as a country. Now, there is a famous dictator. He says that the judiciary is the last hope of the common man. You and I'm not exactly common because I am not incapable of speaking for myself. But there are innumerable Nigerians who are essentially common. And those are the ones that should be the barometer by which you gauge the effectiveness of a judicial system. But no Nigerian looks to the judiciary for hope. If they did, the retired chief of naval staff would not have required the Yerima to stop Wike. It's because nobody has any hope in a judiciary that has proven itself incapable of delivering justice or equity. So everybody takes the law into their hands because nobody has any hope. We don't place any hope in the judiciary. But what we fail to understand is that there is an adjunct to this. It is merely symptomatic of the people's resolve and understanding of the fact that the law does not rule. The people know that the law does not rule. The rulers themselves admit that the law does not rule, which is why they would deploy impunity against impunity. This accelerates the collapse of this state. All he's saying to all of us, and I'm saying it to us now, save our souls, because the truth is we cannot rely on the traditional institutes of state. All the traditional institutions of state have been compromised. There's no justice to be found in the judiciary. I was a practicing lawyer. I can tell you as a fact that there is no justice in our system. I wrote a book on it, and every day they prove me right. Even in dealing with me, they proved me right. You cannot find justice in the Nigerian court. There are exceptions, undoubtedly. There are still good men and women within that system. But as a general rule, the reality is that you don't go to a Nigerian court hopefully because they are hopeless. That is the general situation. It is hopeless. It is hopeless. You know, there are two things saving Nigeria from complete collapse. Two, the elite is not factionalized, and we don't have direct foreign, as in state intervention in Nigeria. What do I mean? If the Nigerian elite were to be factionalized, one set of the elite would seek to use the Nigerian people against the other, and you would have had meaningful opposition. But remember my first book, I was deliberate in titling it. I said, Do not die in their wars. That was because I could see very clearly that these people had no ideological issues. All they had were issues with power sharing and how to share the loot of war. And over time, you can see that their wars are actually done. What has happened is that a faction of that fractionalized, sybaritic, evil class has won. The other is not interested, it's not ideological, it's about power sharing. So they'll find accommodation for each other. It wouldn't surprise me if you ask me, my friend Ekewa Olu has this theory that it was always a triumvirate, that it was going to be Buhari first, Tinubu next, and then Atiku. That is how they've arranged it. It wouldn't surprise me. So they don't quarrel about substance. Their quarrel is always about who holds the loot and how the loot is shared. There were substantial disagreements between Tinubu and Buhari when Buhari got into power. He was excluded. Well, that was because it's my time. Yes, now. So the other one too could say it was his time. So the elite, quote and unquote, because there is nothing elite about them, they have already gone beyond any ideological fight. They don't have. That's why you see the one that is a pastor, the daughter or son who married the allergy. It's almost is an incestuous, highly incestuous elite. It's it functions on this syncretic capacity to just become as one and do whatever is required for the survival of their class. Whatever it takes, they are willing to do it. So, because of that, the illusion of a state is maintained because there aren't strong persons pulling apart on the basis of ideology, which would have ordinarily been strong enough to checkmate the worst excesses of those in power. But there's no such thing. Nigeria is either a failing state or a fragile state. It's not like Somalia and Syria because we still pretend, but it's nearing collapse, and its collapse is almost imminent. Let me say this. The Nigerian is resilient, very resilient. But we have a democratic process that is highly challenged, completely compromised, highly challenged, in danger of imminent collapse. I will say this to all of us. Àìfarabalẹ̀ kébòsí ni ò ṣe jẹ́ jósí. It is a difficult proverb to interpret or transliterate, but let me seek to explain myself. Even in this late hour, as late as it seems, because I must be sincere with you, Nigeria is in danger of imminent collapse. As much as I might be pessimistic about the long-term survival of this country, I am concerned about the human lives, the multitude of lives that are trapped in this space. And this is why I'm making this appeal to all of you who are still capable of saving our soul. Nigeria is in a dire state, in a bad place. is in darkness. But you need to beam your light on us. If a aircraft is going down and it puts out that signal, save our soul, a distress call, and we qualify to put out that distress call this morning, it is incumbent on those who have the capacity to save the distressed souls to save them. So if you're hearing me this morning and in some way, shape, or form, you retain the capacity to do anything to help Nigeria to a systemic reset without violence, help us. I am not preaching impotence, and I'm not suggesting that there isn't a place for personal responsibility, and the Nigerian must take responsibility, even those who call themselves victims, including myself. By this time next week, we should have the ICE platform available for us. We're building the platform already. Kunle Lawal did put out some news on the Instagram platform that is already in place. The purpose at this point can no longer be, it's not about 2027. Any idiot who is talking about 2027, please stop. I'm not going to discourage you from registering to vote. That is a way of showing that you are still human and you retain the capacity. But let's pause discussions about election for a season. Let this be about preserving lives and ensuring that we do not become victims in what is already upon us. It is critical that you begin to organize yourselves. Yes, wait for the ICE platform, which would allow for more interaction amongst ourselves, but at your own levels, wherever you are, whether you are in schools, whether you are at work, in your community, begin to organize yourselves. What kind of country do you want to see? If we're calling you to action, we must be calling you to action to achieve a specific, defined goal. That is when it does not descend into violence. And this is why educating you first is of critical importance, if anything of value must be had. In a few days, it will be the first year anniversary of my abduction and incarceration. Everything that you could ask of me in my own role, in my private space, I've done. Paid a very steep price for doing what I do. And I'm happy to pay even more. But it wouldn't be worth anything if you do not organize yourselves. Organized, we can all be saved. It is critical that we organize. And you can't do that if you continue to allow yourselves to be divided. Your ship is sinking. If we all act in concert, we might yet be saved. But we are not going to be saved by the multiple divisions that have been wrought against us. God bless you, everybody. I didn't come to scare you. That's not my purpose. But I do need you to understand the gravity of our situation. God bless you all. If it pleases God, see you next week. Ìgbà òwúrọ̀ làwà, ọba jẹ́ ká lẹ́sàn-án ní.